So already it is time for another reptile room tour. Now since the last one, an absolutely immense amount of change has undergone with all of the reptiles apart from Speckles the leopard gecko. So I do have actually a load to talk about this time. So without wasting any more of our time, let's get straight into it. If you follow my Instagram page at JTB_reptile, then you might have noticed these changes. But with the line day geckos, I have actually been redoing their enclosure a bit. Now, I have mentioned in previous videos how there was loads of condensation going up the front of the enclosure, and it was sort of obscuring my view of them. So I had different ideas to fix that, but honestly I thought the best way of going about it was just hacking back a load of the plant growth, because there was just too many, just too much in the way of plant growth in there, and I needed to get rid of a lot of it. So as you can see, what I've done is I've took a load of it back. Now, looking at the enclosure from the bottom up, you'll see at the bottom that I have added this tiny little carpeting plant. I actually don't really know what it is because I found it like as a weed growing outside, but the way it was growing looked really nice, so I've planted that in there and it's starting to take off. And then I have also put some cuttings and things at the front. Now, because there aren't really like the plants for the geckos to climb on, I did add some twigs and stuff, but they don't really go down there anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And then finally, at the top of the enclosure, you can see that I did move the bromeliad pup that was growing to a better position. Now, as for the geckos themselves, actually, like, as a major surprise, yesterday something really big did kick off with them and between them, and I don't know how it's going to play out. It could play out quite badly, and I'm sort of really quite tentative with what I'm doing with them at the minute, so I don't want to like unveil that at the minute. I am going to be frank with you, like something like one of them isn't doing too well, put it that way. I'll give you the hint in the word menstrual, so have a guess what you think has been going on. But anyway, in a couple of weeks I do intend to make a full video about them, once I've let what's going on at the minute play out, and I do have more to tell you. Anyway, a bit less exciting is Splat the crested gecko and his vivarium. Now for once, Splat was actually out when I was filming B-roll stuff, so I can actually show you him, and as per usual, there is like nothing to say with Splat because he always just does well. He eats his food, apart from locusts, which he still hates, likes every other insect, not locusts, won't touch him. But yeah, he's doing really well, and there's not really much else to say about him. Although Splat the Cresty himself is pretty much the same as ever, his enclosure has undergone a bit of a change. Now you can see at the front of his setup that the cuttings I added of Wandering Dew and Pilea and stuff have really taken off. The anthurium he's got in there is flowering, and it looks really nice. And you can also maybe see that the bromeliads at the top of the enclosure are starting to blush nicely. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically where the bromeliads turn pink or red depending on the species. The reason for this seems to be that I did actually add a Skylight Tiny Duo unit. Now anybody that's been watching my channel will know that the line day gecko enclosure was kindly given to me by from Dale from DMS Vivarium, and the lighting is courtesy of Skylight Vivarium lighting, and the lights are intended for plant growth. Now I am going to be doing full reviews on each of these products in the future, but honestly thus far the lighting I think is so good for the plants that I did actually buy another set for my crested gecko's enclosure. And as you can see, it's having the desired effect. Moving swiftly on, we do have a look at Char the Bearded Dragon. Now Char's enclosure has probably undergone the biggest changes really. It might not be or seem very big, but what I've actually done is I've upgraded the cable management to make it easier for me to move cables in and out of his enclosure, and this doesn't really seem like much of an upgrade, but in terms of the reptile room as a whole, it is a massive upgrade, because what it means for me is now that to change lights and stuff, I don't have to take the lid off his enclosure. And that means that we can put more enclosures on top of his enclosure and that means that new additions can start coming in. Apart from that, I have actually installed a white python 1 foot LED kit into his basking zone. As I mentioned before, I'm not really keen on the heating elements that give out light, because in my experience, they just don't last as well, and you end up buying loads of them all the time. I've got a ceramic heat emitter and a deep heat projector in there at the minute, but I am still going to be upgrading that because I'm not quite happy with it. And with the ceramic heat emitter in the summertime, I am now really struggling with getting the temperature gradient, because ceramic heat emitters just heat everything around them. It's not like a deep heat projector where it's like pinpoints all of the heat downwards. Ceramic heat emitters just heat absolutely everything around them, and so temperature gradients, if you've got a powerful ceramic heat emitter like I do, you're just not going to achieve it. So I do need to mess around with things and sort that out. But anyway, the LED source is now adding a bit of light to the basking zone, which beardies are keen on. And then finally, for lighting changes, I did actually replace Char's dragon lamp, that's what you call it, the 14% UVB bulb he's got from Arcadia, because it had been in for a year. You may actually notice that I do have a dial thermometer in there with him now, and this is because I did actually only have one thermometer that was separate to the thermostat. So I thought I wanted to get another thermometer, and I thought everybody is always so against these dial thermometers, which in some instances people should be, but honestly they aren't actually inaccurate at reading the temperature, so just take that with a pinch of salt. But I am doing some tests with it to see how accurate they really are, and I will be making a video about that soon. Anyway, again moving on, we do have to look at Red the corn snake, and his setup has been undergoing some changes as well. You will recall that I mentioned that I was going to be changing his UVB bulb as well as Char's, and I have done that now. I've upgraded from a 7% output UVB bulb to a 12% one. You might think that this is quite high, but with the Lamp Guard Pro from Arcadia covering it up, it does sort of like lower the intensity of UVB that's going to be reaching the bottom of the enclosure, and Red does really seem to use UV. Out of all my reptiles, I suppose ignoring the line day geckos, well, you know, out of the reptiles that people sort of generally keep without UVB, so Splat, Speckles and Red, that reminds me, Red might actually be a girl. Need to make another video about that. I'll carry on talking now. But yeah, anyway, as I was saying, Red does really use his UVB bulb a lot. Partial basking and even full body basking on a regular basis. And then you can see that I have also added a white python LED kit to his enclosure too. His, her, whatever, I'll get to that again. But I've added that for the same reasons as I've added one for Char. Now then, I'm going to stop rambling on now because I did feed Red yesterday. I fed him/her a rat pup, so I'll just play that footage now and you can enjoy watching it. And of course, the last of the bunch, and everybody's favourite apparently, according to the poll in the community tab. If you don't take part in my polls, go and take part in them, because it does help out a lot. But anyway, everybody's apparent favourite, speckled leopard gecko, hasn't really had much done with his enclosure. So as per usual, speckled leopard gecko's doing fantastic. I'm feeding him once a week at the minute on just a very small number of insects, but he still maintains his weight perfectly well, which just goes to really show what gut loading can do. If you're like putting loads and loads of nutrients in your insects, you don't need to feed many to your reptiles to keep them going. But anyway, because there's not really much to say about him, I am just going to put some B-roll on of him like walking around and stuff, which I did take the other day. And honestly, that is about it for this video, but I have got quite a few clips of the reptiles I've been taking recently, so I will fade out into those. But anyway, you've been watching JTB Reptiles, and this is the end of the video. So if you want to see more content, then do subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.